Hello everyone, welcome to next session. So in this session we will understand the notifier interface that is provided by Wiremock, why it is required and why we are discussing this, because we will create our own notifier, right? So currently Wiremock does not provide any kind of like logging into a file or a database, right? So I got many questions from the students, they want something to be implemented in the project, like storing all the request response which server receives in the which the Wiremock server receives to be like, or maybe for audit purpose or something else, like they need to analyze a few of the request or responses, or maybe for debugging purpose. So first we will discuss the notifier interface also. So to start with, what we will do, so as you know, here we are already implementing this, so this notifier, right? So we're implementing this new console notifier, so this is the inbuilt one. So now what this console notifier or the notifier does interface. So this notifier is a interface and this console notifier is a class that is implementing that interface. So we will see that in a moment. So the notifier interface in Wiremock is used for logging purpose. So it defines the methods that Wiremock calls to log various events that occur during its operation, right? So if I go here, console notifier. So first let's go to the notifier. So see, this is the method in the Wiremock configuration class, all right? So then if we go here, console notifier, so if you can see here, this is a class and it is being implemented by it is implementing the notifier interface. Let's go to this interface. So this interface, you can see here 4 implementations. So this is being implemented in different classes by different classes, right? So let's break down each method. So as you can see, these are each methods are there. No so the same is being implemented in console notifier, right? So this is the constructor, right? So if whenever we start the server, we can see we have verbose logging enabled whenever we set this here. So we have already tried this. So if I will start this server, right, so we will build the project and will take a few minutes, so then we can understand the notifier class. So I am showing you how it works. So let me go to the notifier class here and go back. Okay, so as you can see here, verbose logging enabled. So this is coming from this console notifier class, right? And these all log informations are coming from the same class, right? Because these methods are being implemented here, right? See, info, right? So the info method is called to log informational messages. So Wiremock uses this method to log informational events such as server shutdown messages, startup messages, stub mappings are added or removed, right? All those things. Similarly, we have error method also. So in error method, as you can see, we have these 2 error methods here, right? So these methods are called to log the error messages. So these are being used in different classes, right, to implement the logging, but this is on the standard output only, which we can see here. We don't have any file or suppose the database where we can save it, right? So what we will do is we will implement this notifier the same way like the console notifier implementing this notifier interface. So we will implement the same and we will create our own like a type of logging framework. So we will use the database here. So we will use MySQL database in upcoming sessions, right? And we will discuss few more events which we need to implement, right? It's quite straightforward, and it's quite advanced topic. So it's up to you, like if you want to understand the code also. The code is quite lengthy, so like complicated, you can go through it. Like here it's the decompiled version I am going through, right? So we will provide our own implementation for the logging Wiremock events, and so like logs information errors such as routing log messages to specific logging framework. So we will route all these messages to our own logging framework, right? So now we will extend this notifier, Wiremock notifier, to store the request response which the server receives in real time to the database for logging purpose, right? So to start with, first we need to create one class which will extend the notifier interface. So if I go here, we need to extend this interface, right? We will implement this. So let me close this. So I've already implemented the database logging notifier, because if I implement it here, it will be like quite lengthy session. So but I will explain each and everything. So to start with, what we need to do here is, let's first create the class, right? I will go here. So this is the logging package I have created, and I will create the class here. Right now I need to copy this whole class here. Alright, so now if you see here, okay, so if you see here, we are implementing notifier interface, right? And this is the database logging notifier class. So you can name, keep any name for this class, right? And this is the JDBC URL, that is the connection string which we will send. These are the variables, right? Okay. Similarly, we have the username for the database, the password, and this date format is which we will be storing it in the database, right? So this is the constructor. So this we will initialize when we will implement it here in the master class. We will discuss this in some time, right? So this is a quite simple thing where I am simply assigning all these values to the variables, right? Now this one are the methods which are there in the interface, right? As you can see, it is given override, right? So these are like mandatory to implement, right? But here we won't be implementing this because this we don't require here, because these are already implemented by the console notifier. So if you want, you can have your own custom implementation here, but since we are discussing here regarding the database logging request response in the database, so we will be implementing our own custom method here, that is log request response. You can give any name here. So the most important thing is, now we are passing here the request and the response. Now what are these request response? So this request response are the building blocks of Wiremock, alright? So these are part of Wiremock library and are used to represent the HTTP request and response object within the Wiremock server, right? So the request it receives and the response it sends, you can catch it from here and you can manipulate it, or you will, like here we will be storing the request. So within, so this is using this request instance, you can have request URL, method, its body, its status, the response status, the response body, right? So for this we have these import statements, right? So we're importing it from the Wiremock library itself, right? So these are the building blocks, you can say, for the Wiremock server, and we are using different methods to store it in the database, right? So they allow Wiremock to handle incoming HTTP requests, process them against the stub mappings or other logic, and generate appropriate response that is sent back to the client or the calling system, right? So we all developers have access to these classes to manipulate the request and response data, right? So here we are building the insert query which we need to insert in the database. So here we are using MySQL, right? So as you can see, we are doing, this is the table name, for we will shortly create this table in the MySQL, right? And we'll understand the structure also. So we are giving the timestamp and we are giving the URL we are storing, then we are storing the method which is there in the request, get, put or post, whatever it is, right? Similarly, we are logging the body also, and then at last we have the response status and the response body if there is any, right? You can also like store the header or something as whatever is provided by this objects, request and response, right? And at last we are executing this statement so that these are committed in the database, right? So this is straightforward. All right, so next what we need to do is to if you are using like any other database also, you always need a connector to connect to the particular database, right? So we have a library for each type of database, like we have PostgreSQL, we have MySQL, we have SQLite. So all these are having JDBC, respective JDBC connectors to connect to the database using the connection string, right? So what I will do here is, so now we need to import the connector in our POM file, right, as a dependency, that is MySQL connector. So I will open this and we'll search for MySQL connector Maven. Okay, so I will go here and let's take the latest one. Okay, we are here. Okay, so we'll simply go back here. I've copied it. I'll go to my POM file and I will include this in the dependency. So here I need to include it, right? So now we have the connector. Let me reload it and save it. Then we will understand how to integrate this with the your Wiremock server, right? So it is downloading the dependencies, all the dependencies of this MySQL connector. So in our next session we'll understand the database structure, and further we will understand how you can integrate this with your Wiremock server. We will call it from our master class, right? As you remember, so we are using here MySQL database. So we are inserting the logs, that is request and response, along with the timestamp in the request response log, right? So we will now what we will do is, so I have already installed MySQL server on my system and MySQL workbench to access the server, right, to create the database and to create the tables. So if you haven't installed, so I will provide you a link on the instruction how you can install it. So it's quite straightforward, right? So next what we need to do is we will understand the structure. I will show you how to create the database and tables. So I will go here. So this is my workbench. So this is the so the root user, the database on my local host. So I will enter the password. So here now first we will create the database. So I will go to schemas. So these are the whenever you will install it, you will get these predefined some of the sample schemas, right, which you can use for testing purpose. So what we will do here is we will create a new schema. So here I will give some name like Wiremock underscore logs. Any name you can give, the same name you need to provide in your connection string. Alright, so I will give apply. So it has now created the database. So here it is our database, right? Now if you will go here, you can see there are no tables here, right? So we need to create the table. So what I will do is I will first set is a default schema. I need to provide the create statement. So I already have it. So let me first create it, then we will understand what all things we have kept here. So I will simply execute this statement, right? So it is running. So as you can see, it is now created. So what I will do, I will simply refresh this. Now we have one table with us, right? So this is our table. So we'll go here, we call table inspector, and we'll go to columns, right? So now this table exactly format is actually matched with the this one which we are using, right? So that because if these both will not match, then there will be error. It will not be able to identify the column and it will throw an error, right? So here we have the id, which is the primary key, right? So it will auto increment, so that's why we are not providing any value here, right? Similarly, we have now the request body, which is the incoming request to the server, and the type is text. Similarly, we have the request method, which has the character as a type, right? So here request method will be something like get, put, post, whatever you will send to the server. So this will be the request URL, that is your endpoint. This is the response body, and we will have the response status code, and finally we will have timestamp, and with data type timestamp. Alright, so these all things we need to have in our database, right? So I will provide you all the script and all those things which are required, which you need to create. So I will provide you this database dump also, that so that it's easy for you to simply import this in your own local database for testing purpose, right? So that's it. So next what we will do is we will integrate this notifier with our server, so that it works live. Whenever a request comes, it is able to store it in the database. Currently this is a standalone class which we have created. It is not integrated to the server, as we will log it, right? So this is the table structure we have discussed, and currently as you can see there is no data in the table, right? So now we need to understand how you can integrate the database logging notifier class which we have implemented, right? So to start with, first what we will do is we need to initialize the notifier, database logging notifier. So we will say suppose notifier equal to new database logging notifier, right? Now we need to initialize this because we are calling the constructor here, right? So we need to have the these three parameters: JDBC URL, username, and password, right? So to start with, first we need the let me do one thing. Alright, so we have these three things. So JDBC URL I have already created here. So this is the JDBC URL for the MySQL one, right? So here JDBC MySQL, we have the database on the local host. This is the default port. So if the port you have configured your server is so if you haven't changed the port while installation, so this will be same for you as well, right? Else you can give your own port number here. And this is the Wiremock logs. This is the database name which we are using here, right? So the next thing is we need to provide the username. So username, I have my root account, and let me give password also here, right? So you can provide the password whatever you have set there, right? Now we will do a very important thing here. So this everything will remain the same because we are initializing the Wiremock server instance here, right? So now we need to tell the Wiremock, like we need to tell the Wiremock what it needs to do with this logging notifier, right? We need to register this logging notifier with the Wiremock existing code or the framework, right? So how we will do it, we have one second, we will do Wiremock server. Sorry, Wiremock server we have already created. So using the same Wiremock server instance, we need to have dot add mock service listener, right? And we have notifier. This is the this variable, right? This instance, and we need to use this. I will explain this as well, log request response, right? So let's understand this now. So here what we are doing is this Wiremock service dot add mock service request listener. So Wiremock server, as we know, is an instance of Wiremock server class, this one, right? So this is the main class provided by Wiremock library for running a standalone Wiremock server, which we are doing since the beginning, right? And this add mock service request listener is a method provided by this Wiremock server class, right? So it allows us to register a listener that will be notified whenever a request is made to the Wiremock server and a response is about to be generated, right? So we are interfering with the Wiremock actual framework, so that we can use our own database logging notifier implementation here, right? So when we are calling this add mock listener, what we are telling the Wiremock is server to notify your listener whenever there is an event relating to handling a request, right? So this includes events such as receiving the request, processing the request against the stuff, and preparing a response to send back to the client, right? So here we are not doing anything with the request server, we are just getting it and saving it in the database, right? And the next important thing is, so here what we are doing here, this one, right? So this notifier is an instance of the database logging notifier class, right? So this, what we are doing here, we are registering a method reference to the method name log request response, which we have implemented here in the database log notifier, right? So this method reference will be called by Wiremock whenever a request is received by the Wiremock server and the response is about to be sent. So this will allow us to log the request and response data using our custom logic, that is database logging notifier, which we have implemented, right? So if you are not clear about this, it's okay. So these are some advanced Java concepts, right? And also if you like, you can go to the code itself to understand this as well. So next what we will do is, we need to test this as well, how it is working, right? So here what I will do is, I will use the same fetch use cases stubs which I have created for this, right? So what we will do is, I will call the create stub also, create stub, okay, so that we can check the get as well as post stub, how it is storing. So now we are done with everything, we just need to start this. So let me do one thing, let me start this. So here as we can see, our database table is empty, right? So what I will do now, okay, our stub is okay. I think so we missed one thing, 1 second. So the last very important thing we have missed here is, we need to use the new notifier instance, that is this one, right? So what I will do here is, I will simply, so you can initialize this new database console notifier here itself, it is fine, right? But we have already initialized, so I will simply place this here, that's it, right? Now this will call our notifier, that is this one, right? So what I will do is, so I have few stubs which are created for this exercise. So let me go here, fetch use cases. So I have some get stubs for API users 1, 2, 3, right, 4, and I have one create stub to show you like how the post is also being stored, right? So these are straightforward stubs. So what I will do is, I will now start this project, and then we will go here. Okay, I already have the request here, okay, so now we will hit the request. So let me show here, we are not having any, and I will go back here, I will click on send. So we are getting the response, right? So this is a static response. So now we will go here, and we will see here. So as you can see, it is working perfectly fine. This is the timestamp, request URL, method, request body, response status goes, and response body. Next, let's test a few more things here, and what I will do is I will give one get here, right? So I am getting here the get response as well. So I will go back here, and I will so as you can see, we have the get request as well. Since we are not having any request body in the get request, so it is showing null here, right? Because we are allowing to store the null as well. So that's how this works. So it's very useful. Many people have already implemented in this in their project, because it's very basic feature that we need to implement, right? So I think so you all are clear. So I will provide you the code in the Git repo and the database structure also. So thank you guys.